Governor Adiko Rada of Katsina State says, contrary to reports that foreigners are responsible for insecurity in parts of Nigeria, about 90% of bandits terrorizing the state are neither strangers nor outsiders. According to Governor Rada, while governors serve as security chiefs in their states, the army and police operate independently. He reiterated the importance of involving locals in the fight against banditry, but insists that insecurity remains a major obstacle to meaningful development in Katsina State. And to bolster security efforts in Katsina, a local outfit which comprises youths drawn from areas affected by banditry is now in place.
Now, for more on the Katsina governor's claim that bandits terrorizing the state are not foreigners and other security matters, we're joined now by Dr. Kabir Adamu, a security expert and not a stranger to the house. Good to have you on Newsnight tonight. Well, it's an interesting dimension that Governor Diko Rada brings to the whole terrorism conversation. He says, look, 90% of these terrorists they're not foreigners.
Yeah,
they are amongst us. They live with us.
Yeah.
And he went on to say that, look, the fight against terrorism cannot end until it is localized.
Yeah, but I think he was speaking about banditry and
right.
not necessarily terrorism.
Well, they are really the same, aren't
no,
they?
there's a difference.
You would know. I mean, you're the expert,
exactly.
Right?
Our law differentiates them. And I think this should be the beginning point to disaggregate the issues. What is going on in Katsina, as an example, may be different. Actually, it's different from what is going on in Anambra or Imo. Mm-hmm. So he was very specific about banditry. And he was saying that they know more than 90% of the perpetrators of the banditry. They know their families, they know who their fathers are, they know who their mothers are, and they live together with them. And his point is that the solution too has to be local. And so his state has come up with a vigilante group that involves youth from the local communities who support the public security organizations, especially with intelligence. He also made the point that the locations, especially the forest where these bandits hide, are known by these young people that they've brought together. And so whatever solution is going to be, it must be local. And I think that is the point he was trying to make. He also complained, which I found rather odd, about his ability as a governor to manage security in the state. He says that whatever decisions they take as the governor, that decision is subject to the approval of someone here in Abuja. If he instructs the police or the military, they're not likely to act on that instruction until somebody in Abuja approves it. Now, that is a little bit odd, because I know there is a State Security Council. I know that he has a security vote that he actually gives to this public security department, and so he has enormous control and influence over them. But having said all of that, what I think is more important is the structure that he has in place to manage public security. And I've said this before on this program, and I will say it again. No northern state at the moment has a structure that is effective or efficient for managing public security. The best that I've seen in the country is in Lagos State, and I'll urge the governors of most of the northern states to take a trip to Lagos and sit down with their peer and discuss with him what did he do. He has never complained, the governor of Lagos State, about his ability to manage security in his state. And the reason is because he's got a structure. It's not about him personally, it's about the structure and the ability of the structure to manage the issues that they have on ground. Unfortunately, in spite of the fact that Katsina created this vigilante group, that structure is missing. And perhaps in the course of our conversation, we can talk a little bit about the structure.
Indeed. I know the Lagos State has the Police Trust Fund in place, and that has been for years.
And Lagos Neighborhood Watch, they've got a command and control center and one other element.
That works for them. But it's not every time we hear governors admit to knowing who these bandits are. I think it's about the second state we've heard the governor admit to saying, we know who they are. This is coming after Zamfara. Initially used to sing this song, that we know who they are, we know where they live. Contrary to what we hear in places like Benue, they say they're foreigners, we don't know them, they're aliens. But the governor particularly talked about local informants and collaborators. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, because he says until you unbundle local informants and destroy their structure, you cannot fix insecurity. But then how do you do this? How do you break that cycle of loyalty and fear, especially in these tight-knit rural communities?
So the eco space that allows a crime to thrive is rife in Nigeria. A criminal will not find it difficult to operate in Nigeria. The socio-economic conditions, the political conditions, the governance gaps, and then the environmental challenges makes it very easy for criminals to actually operate in Nigeria. As an example, what we saw in Katsina, women, I'm just using this as an example, it could have been a man, were caught putting petrol in cellophane bags and taking it to bandits. How many times have we seen instances where food items are being transferred to those bandits? They're getting something in return. And I must also say, with all sense of responsibility, the strategic communication component that should be embedded. Let me even start from the top. We don't have an anti-banditry or a counter-banditry strategy in the country, completely. What Kaduna does and what Katsina does, as well as what the other states do, are very different. So at the federal level, there is an absence of a framework that would support addressing the challenge. So that means the eco space, and I've given you an example, that socioeconomic circumstance that allows people to, poverty is rife, the youth unemployment. So it would probably take a bandit just 10,000 naira to incentivize someone to support it. So point I'm trying to make is we need a holistic approach. If the governor is talking about this, how about the porosity of our borders? Yeah. So many things that come into play, weapons in circulation, ammunition that these guys have access to. So many components. I like the fact that he's speaking about it, but frankly, the solution is bigger than all the things that he mentioned. There needs to be a framework that identifies all the gaps and the vulnerabilities within this eco space, and then, of course, that supports especially collaboration between all the states that are in the northwest, as well as some states in the north central. There is a forest, for example, that cuts across the entire northwestern states and goes into north central. Till date, we do not have a strategy for monitoring what goes on in that forest and from preventing the bad guys that are in that forest from moving from one point to the other. So he's made valid points, but it's a little bit bigger than that in reality.
If you were engaged, say by the Katsina state government, or even the federal government, or Anambra state government, for example, what would be the strategies that you would put on the table, the ones that you can actually put out there without, what would be the strategies? And you say that Lagos State has been able to get it right. What exactly is Lagos State doing, right? So that can be a template.
Number one is to appoint competent and credible people who understand public security. And I say this, I'm very conscious of what I'm saying. Competent individuals. It could be the permanent secretary who is in the secretary to the government of the federal, secretary to the state government's office, who is responsible for security. The second person is, if you have a commissioner, make sure that commissioner understands public security. And for God's sake, give him the authority and the funding that he needs. I've been to some northern states that in the commissioner's office, there is not a single computer. In today's world, you are managing security and you don't have a computer in your office. You must have, so it's a combination of three things. People, technology, and then the system to bring these two together. So that's number one, appoint competent individuals. Number two is to have the structures that would run public security. I talked about the command and control center. That command and control center should have the ability to receive information from all the local governments that exist in that state, and then to disseminate those information. So that there must be, on the one hand, receiving the information, and then on the other hand, disseminating it to the right person. So let's say it's a domestic violence issue. A call came into that center to say a husband or a wife is beating the other, and then it must be handled in a manner that allows speedy response. So that means receiving that information, verifying it's genuine, and then transmitting it to the right place, in this instance, the police. But what if it's banditry happening in a remote local government where perhaps 100 bandits on a motorbike? You must be able to receive that through early warning systems and then disseminating it. So those structures, about 4 or 5 of them, must be in place, and they must be equipped with the 3 things that I've mentioned: people, technology, and then the systems to bring them together. The best scenario, and of course this is a public place, I'm also mindful, I must earn my money.
Absolutely,
The best scenario, and I beg especially the National Assembly to request for this immediately. Let's have a plan that allows us to do a simulation, so that the remotest local government in Nigeria, we do a simulation where perhaps it's a bandit attacked, and then we see how long it takes our public security departments to respond to that. The moment we have that, and the response time should be between 7 and 10 minutes. And anything longer than 7 and 10 minutes is a failure.
And I see how that can boost the confidence of the people to even own the crisis.
And support the security agencies. So these things are not rocket science. They are doable. They've been implemented in several places.
It does look like
Lagos has actually done it.
It does look like we major in the minor and minor in the major. But let me ask you before I let you go, another security issue out there. The Nigeria Human Rights Commission says more people have been killed in the last 6 months of 2025 than the entire 2024. That is disturbing. You follow these figures, your company tracks the figures. Tell us why this is happening. Is the situation getting worse, or strategies changing, or are we reporting better? What's going on? They also say abductions are down, but killings are up. What does that mean?
So we're about to publish our June report, which would show the monthly, quarterly, and then of course the second quarter report. Our figures are higher than that of the Human Rights Commission, but the trend is the same. We're seeing an increase. So when we compared half year 2025 and half year 2024, there's an increase. When we compared abduction, it's declining. So even though our figures are higher than theirs, the trend is the same. And to your question, why are we seeing that? It's simple. Number one, politics. Politics is driving, unfortunately, the insecurity in 3 ways. Number one, they've weaponized insecurity in an attempt to show that the government in place is not doing very well, unfortunately. Number 2 is also disinformation, misinformation that is around the insecurity. So a lot of information you see.
You're saying people are deliberately causing crisis to paint the government bad. You're putting people's life at risk just to paint the government of the day bad. That's what you're saying.
Unfortunately. And it's not as simple as that. And I'll use Benue State as an example, where it's actually the ruling party. Elements within the ruling party that are behind some of the activities are there.
That's scary. The enemy within, that's what you're saying.
I think the greatest challenge is the lack of accountability in all of this, to hold people accountable. Human Rights Commission, someone would say I'm a private company, and perhaps, but Human Rights Commission is a government agency, and it's the one publishing this report. Like I said, our figures are higher than theirs, but the trend is the same. When you compare what happened last year and what's happening this year, the exact conclusion they arrived is the exact conclusion that we arrived. And anyone who feels perhaps these are Nigerian organizations that may be influenced, they should go to ACLED. ACLED is a foreign platform, and it's also saying the same thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kabir Adamu, security expert, joining us on Newsnight tonight. Well, like they say, socioeconomic factors are still at the core of the war against banditry. Thank you very much for joining us.